Who are we talking about? You mean Chief Justice Leo Strine?
Correct.
Chief Justice of the state of Delaware?
Correct.
I remember his dad brought him to, I was a congressman, his dad brought him to one of my town hall meetings at the time. Later on, he came to work as an intern in our office in Washington. I was a congressman. And he and a fellow named Guhan Subramanian were interns that summer. And between Guhan Subramanian, who we called President Guhan, and Leo Strine, who we called Chief, they had more intellectual horsepower than the rest of my staff and me combined.
I believe that his upbringing helped him to be very successful. He often talks about his parents and the humble beginnings that they had when they first started out in Baltimore, and he hasn't forgotten where he's come from.
He comes from a very strong family. I've had the opportunity to work with his brother. I've had the opportunity to work with his mother. His family is similar to him in terms of really committed to our total community, committed to the society. I think some of it is, what he's done for himself, but a lot of it comes from the people who he's been blessed to have as a part of his life. And I'm sure if he's receiving an award today, which we congratulate him for, his wife deserves a bigger one. Carrie deserves the mega award because she is phenomenal as well.
He was a very, very persistent person. He was one of those people when he knew was right, thought he was right when he knew I was right. He would say, just never give up, just don't give up. Those were sort of his guiding principles. It turns out they're mine as well.
So how do you describe Chief Justice Leo Strine? Well, Leo, it's funny, Leo the lion. I hadn't thought about it until this very moment. When I think of Leo, sometimes I think of the head, because he's very, very smart. I think of the heart, because his intentions are always good. Even if you don't agree with how he gets there, his intentions are good. And the hand, he is a worker. He is a hard worker.
We all worked weekends, but I can tell you that even if I went in on a Saturday or a Sunday, Chief Justice was there when I got there, and he often was there when I left. I mean, he was the most hardworking person on our staff.
He began a conversation with a panel of people who were diverse. I know he has had some conversations with Tavis Smiley and some people to really start having this conversation about race. The conversation is a sort of a vehicle to start the healing process and understanding. I think what happens is we tend not to want to have the conversation because it gets very personal. And when things are personal and emotional, it's hard to get, it's hard to sometimes see progress. But I think it's important for people to really start to understand that those things that you feel when you have those conversations about race need to come to the forefront. We need to deal with them. We need to acknowledge that they exist and that we need to move forward. So the chief, his role in that is to sort of begin to start having these public conversations. I think it takes a lot of courage to do that because, as I said earlier, I'm not sure how this promotes his professional agenda. And I know from having personal conversations with him and having a relationship with his mom is that this is something he's very passionate about. So it's very personal to him to think about how we can sort of improve the condition of our communities.
We always had a very diverse office, or we tried to have some diversity in the office. And the Chief Justice has tried to do that as well in some of the different courts that he's worked in, such as Chancery. It's possible that because of his tenure on the Court of Chancery, the number of corporations that are incorporated in the state has increased, because if they, have a dispute, a legal dispute, they want to come before the Court of Chancery. And part of that is because of the legacy of the Chief Justice during his tenure at the court, both as a vice chancellor and a chancellor.
I've asked him to come over and talk about your career, talk about your life. And it's amazing how he impacts the young people. I mean, I have them submit papers to me after the various speakers. And it's always very clear to me that he has hit home with them on at least two very key points. His own incredible commitment to public service and to doing what is right. He didn't start off as the first person in the class. I mean, the Chief Justice worked his way up. He worked hard. And I think he drives that lesson home very well to the young students.
He has leveraged some relationships that I think also helped him move such a huge lift, right? To really look at this issue in its entirety is a really huge lift. How do you move something so big? You certainly have to have the work ethic. You certainly have to have relationships. And you have to have a vision, right? You have to have a vision for how you want this to look in the end. And I think he's articulated that fairly well. One of our biggest challenges in society is just relationships between cultures and races. And this is sort of an effort that really tries to bring those things together by exposing the inequities. And he is unapologetic about pushing back on those who may be after something different than what this initiative or this effort is about. And I really respect that, because sometimes it creates a bit of tension in those environments. And, you know, I got to tell you, I like that.
Oh, I suspect the Chief Justice enjoyed a few controversial situations we were in. And, but that's my point. I mean, he was willing to take those fights on and willing to stand up and take stands. And I think every day, it wasn't just, you know, grandstanding or something like that, but it was every day, hey, we need to look at this differently. Have we thought about this? And he was always willing to do that. And I think it made all of us better for it. I
just remember that it really tested, you know, the substance of who you were.
He is someone who takes his work very seriously, does not take himself all that seriously. He still has a sense of humor, which just sometimes gets a little bit out of control, but not too much. I get into trouble for that too.
I think when you think about legacy, you know, it's that thing that you leave behind. It's that thing that you'll be remembered for. And with Leo, because he's worked on so many important things that impact children in our state, that impact families in our state, there's a lot that he will be remembered for, I hope. But I think it won't just be one thing. I think it'll be a body of work, you know, similar to Louis Redding. You know, you know that name. You might know one sliver of the story because of the world that you live in or work in, but there was a whole pie, you know.